So you just we talked the day before Thanksgiving, so Wednesday,
Yes.
and you have been really, really struggling with the acceptance of your body, right? And you had spent a couple of months binging in preparation for, trying to fix it, and then that's when you contacted me, and I was like, hold off, don't fix it. Let's deal with the issues.
And I wanted to fix it. The only reason I didn't listen to I had not listened to actually any of your videos other than the HCG preparation one. If I would have known that you were going to tell me not to fix my body, I never would have called you because I was not in that state of mind. I would have said, no, I do not want to accept myself fat because it's unacceptable, and I don't ever want that to happen to me.
Yeah, and it has and you're in that state of mind where this has to be fixed. I need my drug. It's like withdrawal, right?
Yeah.
So you're in that stage of, I got to fix it, and you're thinking that I can help you fix it, and you consult with me, and I'm like, we're going to deal with your crazy train, right? The mental issues, the eating disorder, right? Which is actually, do you see it now as not, do you see that it more clearly now that this was not an eating disorder? This is a body image disorder, right? It's more like a body image. We've been talking about it as a syndrome. Like, it's kind of hijacked your identity. It hijacks your life. You have to be thin. It's the only thing that you feel safe with. Do you see that now, the link between it being like a survival syndrome to the body image and not so much the eating disorder is like a tool. It's the way you do it. So that becomes what people fixate on, right? They fixate on, how can I fix my food? How can I restrict? How can I get the thinness? And so the eating disorder is then a consequence. It's not the problem. It's not the cause. It's kind of like, well, no, duh. If you're going to worship thinness, you kind of have to have an eating disorder, right?
Right.
You see that very clearly now.
Yes, but when I called you, I felt like I would rather die than be thin.
Well, that.
I would rather die than be fat. I would rather die than be fat.
Yes.
That was my whole mindset. And anything that was not going to make me thin was not acceptable. I didn't want any part of.
Yeah, and that was not just when we first started talking. You kind of got out the first consult, because we recorded that consult, right? And you were like, oh my God, I would rather be fat. And then you go back in, and then you were kind of back in that syndrome and in that cage, and then that obsession around, I need to be thin, I have to be thin, and my body is hell. This body is sucky. It's, you were there for good 6 sessions with me.
Yeah, and I was really stuck in it. I called you and actually had a session earlier to say, I'm completely back in the cage. I hate my body. It's disgusting. I absolutely must get this weight off. I can't, I was completely back in the cage.
Yeah, and so
I actually started to get myself out of it by watching your videos that I had never watched before.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you were connecting with are the other clients that I've worked with that also struggle with this obsession, right? The syndrome, the body image syndrome, which is the survival need to have a certain body type, right? Which in this culture just so happens to be thinness, right? You would hear their stories and go, oh my God, they are there too, and it is miserable. It is miserable, right? So now we talked the day before Thanksgiving, but the last, I'd say 3 sessions, we kind of almost did them back to back to back, almost every day, right? It was like really focused in on, opening up this and looking at and observing why you had this deathly need to be thin. And we just opened it up, right? And it feels like life and death. And we talked about the symbolism, and we talked about the kind of the idealism of it, that this is supposed to be for life and death, that it had become something for you that was life defining and death defining, death and life defining. And just being aware of that And also being aware that there's potentially an alternative life that exists for you with this body, that you don't need to kill this body or get a new body, that there's an alternative life with the same exact body that is infinitely more rewarding. And it doesn't require that you fix this body first. And we've really focused in and opened that up. And so the last time we talked, you felt it was very eye-opening for you in terms of like, now you're looking at it from an empowerment point of view, right? You got to the point where it was really a decision, and you could see it as a decision.
Yeah.
Where before it was like, how do I get rid of this? How do I get rid of something that I just feel, right?
Right.
We talked about your beliefs.
How do I stop believing that being thin is the ultimate goal? How do I stop believing that fat is ugly? How do I stop believing that I must get thin above everything else? I mean, I didn't see that it was possible to change my mind about that.
But don't you agree that you were suffering to such a degree that there was no alternative? You had to look at what life would be like if you had to stay in this body that you just binged to get to, right? Thinking you'd fix it. So it's not like the body this just happened to you. You've been binging thinking you'd fix it. So, but ultimately this need to fix it it had created this vortex of binging, and it's insanity, right?
Right.
So you had to really grasp, if I want out of this cage, if I want out, I'm going to have to find a different way. And is there a different way to get out?
Right.
No. Right. We that's why we sat there for such a while, really picking apart. I said, I went in the cage with you, and I'm just drinking a beer, and you and I are shooting the shit about how crazy this is and what's life supposed to be like. It's really just talking about it. Do you see that too?
Yeah, and I still don't know how it happened, but it sure happened.
It did. Okay, so this is why I'm recording this today. It's almost like I love this. I love this not because it does something for me in terms of like my life, but the fact that you are allowing me into that cage to talk to you gives me the opportunity to show you there is an alternative, and you can escape this if you choose. You can choose to stay and work on losing weight first, right? Like that's ever going to have an escape. And that's the other thing you had to come to. If I try to lose the weight first, there is no escape, because now I have to stay, right? They're like we talked about, it's like you go in the cage and you can't leave. And if you do, you're going to be fat. So ultimately, you've given me this opportunity to just talk to you about it. And how do you think it feels on my side to hear what you're telling me today?
Oh, it must feel wonderful.
It does. It's almost like, oh my God. And I want you to consider your case in this circumstance.
Okay. To consider my what?
Your case.
My case?
Your case. Like your situation here. What do you think the likelihood of you escaping this was when we started?
Oh, I thought we were talking years and years and years of therapy and pain and just hours and hours and hours of unraveling and pain and work. And even then, I probably wouldn't really be free, because I never had been free before. That's what I thought I was facing. And it just was so bleak.
Yeah, like 0% chance of recovery, like ridiculous. Yeah. And the fact that you were willing to work with me, because I guarantee, and I already know this, anytime I go in to work with someone, they might not, it feels like you're going to die, and they might not want it in that moment. And that means you're not going to recover. So the fact that you were feeling that way and you wouldn't give up, even though you hated me during it, and I knew you were projecting it onto me, and I'd be like, hey, I know what's going on. You're blaming me for your pain, right? We worked together. No one got pissed off and offended. Right? And it was just like, again, it's like you and I sitting in the cage, shooting the shit, drinking a beer, and making fun of each other. And I get it. I've been there before. And I'm like, dude, don't complain if you're not going to leave. And you're like, I know, my God, I don't know what to do. Right?
Yeah.
Anyways, so it unraveled. And I want you to explain to the listener, if you can do it. Because it's very difficult to explain, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because I know that you took me through, because when I was really stuck there, you took me through what would it be like if I had, like, no arms and legs, or I was burned, or basically there was no chance of me ever losing weight. What would life be like? And I had to really feel that, that's just basically all I remember. I can't even think of it. You know how I feel now? Now that it is unraveled and now that it's gone, I feel like I always thought I would feel when I was thin.
Yes, I know that.
I never did.
Yeah, oh yeah, you always think that when you lose weight, you're going to be free. Remember when I said to you, that's what you're gambling with, and that's what you signed the contract with the devil with? He said, or the devil says, here, I can make you thin. The devil is the dieting, the body image culture. When you're thin, look at Marie Osmond. She's on TV and look how happy she is. And everybody's selling you this. They're selling you this, aren't they? But is this what you actually get? No, you don't, because you have to stay in the cage. You can be thin, but you can't leave now. Yeah. And then when you do leave, you feel ashamed. And do you see now that it's all because of the what we believe? It's not even real. It's a belief system. It's like an illusion that people who are thinner are superior, that people who are fatter are inferior. And I want you to now that you are out of that, can you see how bizarre it is?
Yeah.
And if you believe it, that you are essentially basically locked up and can't really experience anything, and you don't really get to understand life because you're so fixated on, am I good enough yet? Is this enough? What do people think? Are she thinner than me? Am I pretty enough? I mean, you're fixated on something like, is my body good enough yet for me to be alive? Right? And we've talked about like being suspended outside of the body, like you're not inhabiting it. Right? Don't you agree that really going into those explanations to give it a voice was important too? Not just desensitizing, how catastrophic you thought being fat was. Because we remember I said we're going to go through desensitization. I'm going to give you a bazillion different scenarios. So there was that, but there's also all of the conversations. I mean, you and I, what is this, our 7th session? So this is our 7th hour. Well, 9 if you include the consult, right? 9 hours of talking. And really focusing in on not the, let's go into how we explain the brain chemistry. No, we're talking emotionally. I'm speaking to the emotional and the survival side of the brain when I go into that cage with you, right? So giving it a voice, I think, too, is really important. Because when you're in it, you don't know how to explain it. You're just thrown into this chaos of insane emotion, defensiveness, hiding paranoia, anger, withdrawals, and you don't know how to explain it all. And you don't know why it's there. So having that guidance in terms of giving it a voice also makes it so that you can think about it now in a different way. Right? But you had to question the beliefs around, if I am fat, does that mean I'm inferior? Does it really mean I'm an inferior human being? And does it make my soul useless? So tell me how you feel. If you were to give a difference, a comparison to how you felt the last 40 years, okay, with this, versus how you feel today, how would you describe the difference?
Oh, God, it's huge. A huge difference. Now I can't explain it except I feel lighter. I don't feel like there's this nagging feeling like I gotta do something, because I didn't realize that always, 100% of the time, in the back of my mind, I was having to lose weight, having to eat less. I mean, that was always in the back of my mind. It was like a huge burden, and I didn't realize it. It made everything else in my life catastrophic because I felt like I was already at my limit because that was so stressful that anything that happened to me in my life just put me over the edge. I was so irritable. I felt overwhelmed all the time. I couldn't tell why, and now all that's gone just from this one switch in my thinking.
Mm-hmm. Do you see now that if it was a mental illness that you wouldn't be this significantly different in such a short period of time?
Exactly.
And we could say our last conversation, that hour, is when the switch flipped. Because up to that, it was like, oh, I can't do it. And there was something in our conversation. First of all, there is a degree of suffering that you had to go through. Mm-hmm. Do you see that now?
Yeah.
Like, you have to be pretty bad to force yourself to be honest with yourself, and then to force yourself to actually want to go into being fat as if it's real, because that's the other part, right? So within that hour, there's a moment where, and I always say the significant shift truly occurs when the individual goes into it as if it is real. Mm-hmm. It becomes realized, where the brain actually accepts it. And that was our last conversation. Going into it as if it is real, as if you're drinking that potion. Do you remember that conversation? And it is now permanent. And you don't give yourself an alternative. That is where your willpower is. That's actually where your will exists. Like, that's the only place you have freedom left. We talked about that too. Like, everything else is basically, you don't have any freedom. And it feels that way. There's one point of which you still have freedom of choice, and it has to do with accepting.
Yeah.
Right? And we have to accept the worst case scenario. So anyway, so it should feel as if you're out of a cage. Like, there's infinite possibility. It shouldn't feel heavy. It shouldn't feel, your brain shouldn't feel dark anymore. It shouldn't feel dark and heavy. Like, there's more oxygen. You should feel like you can breathe. Like, there's more oxygen getting to the body. That it doesn't feel burdensome. Almost like you had like the world on your shoulders, and you had to function in this world with such a heavy burden on your shoulders that you couldn't breathe, right?
Yeah.
And that's gone, and you should feel like you can breathe. I felt, the words I described for myself are levitation. I felt like I was levitating. Like, there was this. I remember
you talking about that.
Yeah. The other feel is like infinite love. Like, when you see people, do you not see things differently?
Yes.
There's just this feeling of love and like and not only that, but this connection with the earth, the trees, the plants, the animals. There's this weird sense of like life around you everywhere.
Yeah. I felt almost like,
yes.
It's kind of like when I used to, when I first started drinking, because I was an alcoholic for years. I mean, I remember when I first started, that little buzz, and that's almost what I felt like. It was almost too good to be true. It kind of made me nervous a lot at first, and then I realized that it was really gone. And I still can't. I'm trying to describe this to a girlfriend of mine, and she kept saying, but you're gonna go back and forth. She goes, you always do.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, that's because you're diseased, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see that? That's not true. That's not true. That's true. That's true if you continue to have those beliefs. Yes. Mm-hmm. If you always have those beliefs, you will be diseased. Do you see now that it's the beliefs that are diseased?
Yes.
So when you believe them, you essentially are wiring disease. Because the beliefs are diseased. They don't have lenience. They don't have grace. They're self-centered. They're superficial. And they're very superior, inferior oriented. They're survival, right? So if you have beliefs that are very survival oriented, you're considered diseased. And it's you that's the problem. Not the beliefs, right?
Right.
Do you see that now? That it's like all we had to do is get rid of the beliefs, and what happens to your brain?
It just settles into. I mean, it's just like it's lifted.
Yeah. Did we need do we need antidepressants for this to happen?
No.
Did we need you to right? It's like it took 7 hours of conversation.
I'm still really amazed that it happened that fast, that I could just walk away from 43 years of burden and health. I mean, I was so locked into I have to be thin at all costs. I was so locked into having to starve the rest of my life. I was so locked into that. I just wanted to die. I wanted to die and get to heaven. I wanted just to be gone with this earth. I couldn't imagine a life that I wanted to live because I didn't realize it, but I couldn't imagine a life free of that, and it was literally making my life unbearable.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember when we talked about narcotics?
Yes, I do. Yes,
do you understand now when I said to you, oh, it's the cage? First of all, it isn't the narcotic. It's the shitty life you're living.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that now?
I think so. I mean, what are you talking about? Are we talking about the narcotic, or are we talking about the
need for the narcotic? The need for the narcotic comes from a shitty ass life. The narcotic becomes like for once in your life you feel good, and then it goes away and you feel like shitty, and your shitty life is back, right? And it's not because
exactly, because I was looking for the drugs or the alcohol to lift me out of the cage. Yes. Is really what I wanted.
You never thought that you could change the cage.
The cage is gone. You don't have to have it anymore.
No, in fact, you should feel like, even if I had heroin right in front of me, I don't think I'd take it. It's got too much baggage. Right? Mm-hmm. It's this temporary thing, but then there's all this baggage. It's just not worth it. It's kind of like, do you want your thinness? Because that was just as addictive as cocaine and heroin. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Do you see that now? Actually, I want you to consider which drug was worse, alcohol, heroin, or trying to stay thin.
Trying to stay thin.
Thank you. Because it hijacks your need for food and your shell. It's like it's really poisonous.
Yeah, because you're always hungry, you're tired,
and you'll never get away.
You're cold. Yeah.
You'll never get away until you're emaciated. Right. And then you still have to stay emaciated. So it's like permanent hell.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And then you isolate yourself, so there's no social environment. You can't have food. So you're literally stuck in this crazy survival, like life and death survival mechanism. Do you see that now too? That it's an incredible system. Like when you pull back, you're like, oh, no shit. If I lived in a third world environment and we had cataclysm, that would be perfect. I'd go right back into that. Because it would work. You'd be obsessive compulsive, paranoid, hoarding. And you're kind of dangerous as a human being, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah. Very unstable. I mean, you're always fighting you're fighting your instincts, your subject. God made you that way so that you would have, you can survive. Otherwise, you didn't,
Yeah, you see that now. It's like
you would die. Yes.
You can see that mechanism isn't a disorder. Mm-hmm. You just had it relative to thin supremacy, not really cataclysmic starvation. Do you remember the conversation where he said, okay, inferiority is an actual very important emotion because it's good to know you're inferior to a bear. Mm-hmm. Who's the better mammal? The bear or the human? Where are we in the chain? We're below the bear. I personally reserve my inferiority with a bear or even jumping into the ocean. I am certainly inferior to the mass of the ocean. I'm okay admitting that. But those emotions of inferiority, you might want to reserve that for, gravity off of a cliff. You're inferior to that gravity off of the cliff. That's a great alignment with reality. But someone who's thinner than you, should they have the power of your inferiority? That's a real important emotion when it comes to survival.
I'm thinking if you're in the room, and literally being afraid that somebody's going to walk in who's thinner than you, It's such a waste of that.
I know. It's like that is an amazing mechanism. Why are we judging it? I don't think you have it. We could say because it's attached to something so, not real. Remember, it's an illusion. That's insane. Yeah. Yes, and that's often I'm like, it's crazy insane, isn't it? It is because it doesn't match a reality. Like it would make sense if a bear walked in the room that's angry that you would feel that way for sure. Mm-hmm. That aligns. Yeah. Those mechanisms have a huge value in that point of view because you're going to run, you're going to bolt, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
Or hide, and it just doesn't align. And no one questions these beliefs, so we had to look at those beliefs. Don't. And there was a lot of time spent talking about how messed up the belief was, right? How this is a form of idolization. You're giving the power to this diet culture and the body image culture and right. They have the power of your life. And these people, you don't even, right? We had to go through quite a bit. I know we're repeating this, and let's close the video. I'm going to stop recording, but it is possible, isn't it?
Yes.
And it
just does happen that quick. That's what I'm amazed at.
Yeah, but it's not like I sprinkled fairy dust on you, is it?
No.
No, I didn't. No. In terms of how you got through this, did I really do anything?
You led me through. I mean, I had never found a way to say, nobody ever challenged my beliefs that sin was better. I mean, so you did lead me through that. You did challenge those beliefs. Nobody ever did that. So you did do something.
I get that. But when it came down to you actually in your mind thinking about your life being fat permanently, I didn't do that for you. I didn't do that. No. And do you see that was the exit? Like you went through the door.
Yeah.
And I said, this is the door. This is the door. You're going to need to face this. Open it, go through. And you're the one that had to go, you know what? Mm-hmm. I'd rather be on the other side. Now.
I really just,
Go ahead.
I guess there was like a week period there where I really didn't think, I said, screw it, I'm just going to worship the golden calf. I can't get out of here. Yeah, I felt stuck and I thought I was just another false hope.
So there had to have been a moment where you actually internalized it. There had to have been a moment where you actually laid down or you sat down and you actually cried it out and you said, okay, if this is permanent, can I accept it? And you looked in the mirror. There had to have been a point that you actually did it without me.
Yeah.
I just said, you need to accept it. This is how you do it. And you actually, you swallowed it. You did it. You were like, okay, oh my God, I have to look at this as if it is real. And remember, we talked about, you can't just hope for it to lose weight later because you're not going to go through.
Right.
Where you actually accepted it permanently. The key is the permanence. Do you see that too? That this had to be a permanent thing you had to go through.
Yes.
Now, once you did that, that was when it changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it changed for me. That's when it changed for all of the other clients who've actually gone through the whole thing. There are people who refuse to do it, and they can't do it. And they don't get this.
I can see that.
I know, I feel bad for them. I'm like, you're so close. You're so close. Maybe they need to suffer more, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't judge it. It's like, that's...
You did tell me I needed to go out and suffer more. I remember that.
Well, that was because if you needed to be thin, that was like, all right, go ahead and start. You remember me saying that? Well, maybe we should go do another round. Maybe you should do that. I'm supportive of it. To me, it's like, that's not an indication of failure at all. That's just an indication that you really need to learn how to suffer more. You're going to do it again, right? Yeah. You're going to go around the circle again. You're going to do it again. You're going to keep on running on the wheel.
Yeah, well, I thought I wasn't willing to look at it as being, my attempts to be thin as suffering either, because I started to look back on it with rose-colored glasses. Like, I didn't remember that it was that hard. It seemed almost, that it was such an illusion.
Yeah, that's the withdrawals. You go through the withdrawal because you think that illusion that I'm going to have this freedom when I lose the weight, and being fat keeps me held hostage, when in reality, trying to be thin is what's holding you hostage.
Yes, that's perfectly Exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and it's like you have to flip it inside out, right? You have to. That's why I say this is not about going. A lot of people say, "Oh, you have to go through it." Bullshit. That's not true. You haven't recovered if you're saying that. No, you have to flip this inside out and back out backwards. You have to accept being fat. You don't just go through it. No, you need to go through. The way you went in is saying, I want to be thin to feel better. And you need to say, I'd rather be fat to feel better. That's like the reverse.
Right.
I'd rather be fat to feel better. Do you see how we backed out and flipped it inside out?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And what happened to your brain chemistry? What happened? Are you diseased?
No, I feel really good.
Like, you should feel for the first time in decades, quote unquote normal.
Yes, and I feel wonderful.
So, quick question before I stop this.
Okay.
If I told you right now, we're going to do the protocol, and you're going to lose weight, would you do it?
No.
Can you?
I don't want to take that chance. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to fall back into it. I don't want anything to do with that.
How's that feel?
I'm shocked.
Well, because it's a choice. You're choosing this. It's like you have actually this will here that is yours. It's not the diets. It's not associated to what type of body you have. It's unconditional choice. It's like, I don't give a shit. I would rather stay this way.
I cannot believe that I am saying it even. Because, I mean, I was pissed when you told me that we weren't going to do the protocol really right away.
But then I told you we would. I mean, I said, if you want to, we can do that. This is not my deal, but if you really want free from this, you need to go a different route.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Amazing. And so the other thing is the eating to hunger. Okay, this is my last question. Can you tell now that you, without the anxiety, okay, because that's the one thing you should be like amazed at, the fact that you don't have this anxiety, this weird vibrational like zzz, where the stress, that should be gone. Have you noticed that your body's awareness of hunger is like way easier? Like, I'm just not hungry. Oh, I don't know. How much should I eat? I don't know. There's no stress or anxiety around it.
Right. Exactly. Yes. I don't really, I think about, am I hungry now? And then what do I feel like? And it doesn't really matter.
No. So it's much easier to actually feel what hunger feels like and what satiation feels like. You should feel that that's easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before it should have felt like impossible because there's so much anxiety around, am I fat? Am I thin? Do I need to lose? I can't eat this. I can't eat that. I mean, the crazy train, right? Of survival is running in your brain. How do you eat relaxed when you're trying to survive around fear with food? And I ruined it, and then you overeat, and then you feel like shit about yourself, and then you feel like I'm the worst person, right? That vicious cycle is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So the last few days, you just went through Thanksgiving. How'd that go?
Oh, it's really kind of effortless.
You just said effortless. I just want you. Did you hear it?
That's how it feels. It's not even a big deal. And the only time I do is if I start to judge what I've eaten or tally it up, and all of a sudden the anxiety comes back, and I have to completely go back to, I don't care about my body.
Yep. And then it goes away. Yeah. You could say that's just residual conditioning. I would be shocked if you stay in this space, if you choose to stay here, that you're even it's going to be there in the next 48 hours. It's going to change very quickly. Because that's like decondition. There's a little bit of condition left. I know for me that it was instantaneous. I had an instantaneous recovery, just like you did. And then the residual, like, I'm eating peanut butter. Oh my God, the calories. You take a moment and you're like, it doesn't matter. I'm letting it go. Que sera, sera. It is the will of God, whatever that is. I will allow it to happen. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And I haven't had it since. It was like 48 hours of just a few meals that happened. But for the most part, I mean, when you compare it to the cage that you were in, it's, for the most part, pretty instantaneous. Don't you agree?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I mean, it's struggle up until that point. I know for me, it was the out-of-body experience I had, everything that I've been going through with you in these hours that went through my head. And I don't know how long it took. It was an out-of-body. It was a guided out-of-body. I don't know what happened, but it ended up within however long. I don't know if it was 5 minutes, 30 minutes. I woke up and it was gone. Or I didn't wake up, but I got up. I made those choices myself, just like you did. Remember, I knew there was something going on. My head was being guided into thinking differently. And I was shown an exit. And I went through what you did, which is, could I handle life? I went through and was given the opportunity to be in a fat body. I had these different experiences. And then I made the choice, just like you did, independently. Right? I didn't make the choice for you. You did. I did the same thing and then the next meal I remember fixing was that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You know?
Yeah.
And I ate it. And I laid on the floor and accepted all the fat that I could feel coming and happening. And it was just over. It was just literally never been back. And I remember walking around campus thinking, oh my God. First of all, how I viewed people was so bizarrely different. A total 180. People I would have judged for their piercings and their clothes and they're so evil. You know, they're awful people. I just loved them. I just thought, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It just naturally happened. It's not like I had to read a self-help book to tell me how to do it or to go to church for. It's like I've been to church.
Right.
I was indoctrinated into it. Never experienced this. Right? Studied the Bible.
Yeah.
Never got it this way. Right? The delivery of this was just like immaculate. It was incredible. And it wasn't because I relied on anything. It was because I actually provided myself grace from all those beliefs. Right? And it was me doing it. I did it. Therefore, this awareness was granted. Do you see that now?
Yes, I do.
And it's like how I remember thinking I almost committed suicide, partly because I was told this was a permanent disease. This is genetics. I'm going to fight it my whole life. That was to me like handing me a rope and saying, here's the noose.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, these people don't know what they're doing. The recovery programs, these therapists, they have no idea. How can they? I wasn't judging them. It's not like they knew this and withheld the information. They just are so far off. So far off.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you have anything you'd like to say to the listener before I stop recording?
I mean, I can't really just keep, listening. I know for me, when I kept going back in the cave, it did help me with listening to the other videos.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would forget that I was in the cave and how miserable it was, and it did help me, like in between conversations. Because it's kind of over a period of maybe a week or two or whatever where you have that change of mind. And but like you said, some people, can't relate to the videos, other people can. So that was just my case. Yeah.
And for me, it's like that dark spot you're avoiding. That's the way to get out.
Yeah.
That dark place that you're afraid of. You need to go that direction.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? It's so simple too. Don't you feel that now? This is so damn simple. That was it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for letting me share this.